This is the third chapter of Unveiling the Vanguard, the story of the first females of the Barbados Cadet Corps. I'm Miles Eversley. Thanks for joining us. In the previous chapter, the ladies shared their various accounts of being introduced to cadetting in 1973 as they referred to their bold pursuit to join the No. 3 Company of the Barbados Cadet Corps. You would recall that the cohort was initially attracted to this organization because of its precision, its meticulous nature, and the many class acts displayed by the No. 3 Company as the members carried out various routines. They were also attracted to the academic aptitude of the company's highest ranking members and, of course, the activities and training that cadets undertake. Therefore, in this program, we will hear of their experiences as cadets as they engaged in activities under the guidance of then Lieutenant Dighton Maynard.
Colonel Maynard made cadets for Common Cadets very exciting. We did weekend exercises, we did camps at school, and we used to do route marches on a Friday afternoon with our drum corps making a lot of noise, and everybody would come out, people would come out of their homes and cheer us on.
We got these uniforms, of course, in no way intended for young skinny girls. My first pants was a size 40 waist. So it took quite a bit of adjustment. And my first pair of boots, those were size 10 male, and my feet were nowhere near that size. So it meant I used to bandage my foot, the arch, and my ankle to make them thicker, and wear about 2 or 3 pairs of socks, and just draw those laces tight and put the puttees on tight over them because the uniform was totally different. We got our uniforms 2 days before the first route march. It was a route march to Lower Estate Sugar Factory. And I got mine finished, the alterations completed in time. None of the other girls did. So when I got to school that day, ready to go on this route march, thinking the others would have been with me, nobody else had their uniform, nobody else went. So we were there marching. At that time I had long hair, 2 long ponytails. And so, as usual, people came out to see the cadets marching up the road, along the way, from Commermere to Lower Estate. And the shocked reaction, that's a girl? That's a girl? They got girls and cadets? And so that was in the evening. By the time we were going back, it was dark. And there were people, word had spread that there was a female, and they suspected that there was a female. So people were waiting under street lights for us to pass. You see what I tell you? That's a girl, that's a girl. And man said, give me my $5, give me my $5. I would never forget that. So somebody actually bet as to whether I was a female or not.
When we did the route marches, I mean, we walked from Commermere School all the way down to Old Town, St. James, and we took up the entire road. We didn't walk on the sidewalk. It was, you know, all these cadets taking up the road. For me, it's like saying, you know, this island is yours. So you know what? I can disrupt traffic on a weekend because this is mine. And the response from people was, well, we don't mind. You're taking up the road. You're making us uncomfortable. But Barbados is yours. And so you can do what you wish in it. You can mash up the place, as they say, in a positive way, in a very positive way. Because this country is yours. And it's yours for the taking. It is yours to march around in. It is yours to take up and occupy. That's how I felt when we would do the route marches. And I think that's what, for me, can inspire, cadets can inspire among the youth of Barbados. You take up the road because the country is yours. It seemed to me as though they expected youth to take over. It didn't matter if you block traffic on a Friday afternoon. It is a way to me of accepting your youth, making them feel a part of the society and a part of community. And if you took up all the road on a Friday afternoon, so be it. You are part of us, so why not? But we did those. We did a couple of those during my time. Remember, we would only been in cadets for about 2 years. I think we did about, I can't remember, probably about 2 route marches. Then we would do weekend exercises. The weekend exercise that stands out in my mind was the one we took to the East Coast. We left Commerce School on the Friday afternoon, and we walked to Bizzix. I don't know if you know, Bizzix is an old plantation house on the top of a hill near the East Coast. You'll walk there, and we would spend the night there. Yeah, the Bizzix plantation house, which was old and probably just a ruin, was supposedly haunted, but we slept there overnight. And some cadet had the great idea of flying through a window in a sheet in the middle of the night, causing a furor. And we had meskits. We had meskits, and we had powdered milk. So you had to sit and stir this milk. I remember there was one cadet in particular. There were all these little flies dropping, not little flies, little moths dropping in his milk. He said, I really and truly ain't bothering to take them out tonight. I am just drinking. Which he did. So we slept at Bizzix overnight, and I would say getting to the building on top of the hill was quite an exercise. The older boys would give themselves boots with rubber soles, but the little boys had boots with metal soles, so getting up the hill was quite a task for them. They'll take 2 steps and they'll slide right back down. Take 2 steps and slide. They virtually had to crawl up the hill. That's just boys. So the boys were to each other. And I remember Roseanne and I went down the hill and hauled up a couple of them. We hooked them in onto our belts and brought them up. We felt so sorry for them. They're tiny and they can't get up the hill. And the older boys couldn't care less. They said they will get up when I'm ready. I think some of them took a long time to get up the hill. So we slept overnight at Bizzix Hill, and then you got up very early next morning, like 5 o'clock, and walked to the East Coast. And that was a walk I will always remember. It was a really lovely early morning walk. And we walked through like a little village, and all the little children were coming out, and then all the fowls, you could hear the pigs grunting, you could see people with their sheep and their goats. A really rural part of Barbados. We then spent the night at the East Coast Road, but we were led by a very laissez-faire corporal, and he really, we were supposed to build a shelter to stay there, to sleep in the shelter in the night. We kept asking him during the day. He spent the whole day lounging on all them benches at the East Coast. We kept asking him, when are we going to build the shelter? He said, man, get some coconut branches and see what we can do. We can build that later. Other people, other groups had built far better shelters. I think at the last minute we built something with some coconut branches and some sticks from around the place. And it would have been okay, except that around 8 o'clock, when Colonel Miller was doing his inspection, the rain came down. Ours got washed away. So there we were, standing up. Colonel Miller has come to take inspection to see, well, what kind of shelter have you built, what have you done? And the rain is just pouring down. Pouring down and washing away everything. He is folding in his mouth, trying not to laugh. I know he was trying not to laugh. Because he had to be strict. We hadn't done what we should have done. And I think he just turned around and left. But we had to sleep on the benches at the East Coast that night. Because we hadn't done what we should have done. Then the next morning, you got up and you walked to St. Andrew's Church. We were so tired. I remember lying down on graves in St. Andrew's churchyard and sleeping. I was so tired. And then the regiment would send a big jeep, a big van to collect you, a big truck to collect you and take you back to Commerce School, and then you went home. But I remember that weekend exercise. That was so much fun.
Soon after that, we took part in the Remembrance Day Parade. And people came out to see these girls. And Independence Day Parade soon after that.
We had to go to the headquarters, which would be was now the Barbados Defense Force headquarters. We had to go overnight. And we spent most of the night, the boys spent most of the night, and we did too, but we couldn't get it done as good as they did, polishing boots and polishing all the metal parts of the belt. And Colonel Banfield was the person who was in charge, and we were all afraid of him. He was something else. So we just knew we had to be, well turned out. I remember that we were put in the middle. We were put in the middle of the group when we were marching down to town, and people kept looking and weren't sure whether are those girls, but we didn't put us on the outside. They put us in the middle. I suppose maybe I don't know why, but we were put in the middle. Maybe they felt it was a way of protecting us, but they put us in the middle.
I remember people making similar comments down the bus. That one is the girl. Look, she's a girl. There goes one of the girls. They would look to see that you were keeping in step, you knew what to do and so on, and you looked smart. And that's the response we got for the parades.
And I remember we marched down to town. After doing the parade on the garrison, we marched down to town. And what I do know is that we went back to the Defense Force and we were fed a very good meal. And all the fellas were looking forward to that. Those who had been on the parade before, all they kept saying afterwards, but we go back to the Defense Force and get some food. And we did, I remember that. And then somebody came and took you home.
Now, when we were practicing for, I think it was the second Independence Day parade, the energy crisis struck, and everything was scaled back. So we had practice for a floodlit tattoo. We had practiced the marching and everything, and then it didn't come off because there was an energy crisis, and those sorts of things were not done. They didn't do it, but at least we had the practice, and it was good. But we were very well received by the people. I think people came out to see the girls. The novelty of girls in this movement, wearing these boots, the beret on. And I think more than one of us, at least two of us had Afro hairstyles, so we couldn't really tell unless you looked really hard that we were girls.
So, yes, we got generally a very good reaction from the public. They were pleased that we were, and we, of course, had a point to prove. So we were very, very crisp, very, very crisp on the parade square.
I also traveled with the cadets to Dominica, and we traveled to St. Vincent. And in Dominica, I was the only girl. I was the only female. I think the whole Common Cadet Corps went to, as many as their parents would allow them to go, went to Dominica. We took one of those boats, the Federal Maple or the Federal Palm. You know about those? You look too young to know about those. They used to ply a trade between the islands. So we went on, and we went on deck, and we weren't in any cabin. We went on deck, and we sailed from here to our first stop was St. Lucia. So we stopped in St. Lucia. We spent the day in St. Lucia, and then I remember walking around with Major Skeet, the Williams boy, the Strawn boys. I remember walking around town with them for the whole day. And then we went to Dominica. When we got to Dominica, it had no harbor. So they had to send out these little boats the boats for us to climb down into. And of course, one of the cadets knocked off. The officer who would come first knocked off his hat and his butt. In his zeal to get into the boat and not fall into the water. And then we drove from Roseau to Londonderry, which was a camp very near what was the airport, way out of town, but a beautiful campsite. It had it had the bar rooms, it had rooms for like ancillary staff, it had a big kitchen, had a parade square, had separate rooms where you could the band could practice, where you could do map reading courses, where you could carry out your classes that you need to do for the badges that you have to do in cadets. That was a really good experience. I truly enjoyed that as well. So Dayton Maynard had arranged this camp in Dominica, and it really was a success. We did church parades where we put on all our plumes, I used to call them plumes and feathers, all the fancy stuff, and marched to the nearest church and took up all the front rows and had the whole town coming out in those areas, because we were in the country in Dominica. And we would pass also rivers where we would see women washing. And I remember one cadet having seen the women washing in the rivers. There was a river near the campsite, and he felt that he could do the same thing, except he didn't quite know what they did. And clearly he didn't wash at home. So he went down to the river with all the other cadets, and he put his clothes in and put in his powder, his detergent, it was supposed to put, and they all went sailing down the river. And somebody had to run and rescue his clothes for him. But they had fun. But you also had to work. You know, during the day you took classes. You did map reading and map work. I think, I can't remember all the things we did now. I think one of them was first aid. But you were working for badges.
Evidently, in addition to the fun experienced, there was a focus on working to develop life skills and model citizens, encouraging discipline in cadets, instilling values that would be carried on into their adult lives. Now, the Dominica camp of 1974 was not the only overseas camp that was experienced by the cohort. In 1975, cadets from the then 3 cadet companies in Barbados traveled to St. Vincent. What was that trip like?
Well, there's some memorable moments.
It was the final year of school.
Getting there on a little boat called the Seamstrand between here and St. Vincent. That was a rough passage.
The accommodation was not the best. Each person didn't have a bunker or anything. You made up some kind of sleeping arrangement on the deck, or for those who were feeling cold, you come inside the cabin, you know. So it was like that. And many of the fellows were sick. You know, just going to St. Vincent, they were sick. And going to St. Vincent is not bad because we are going, the wind is behind us, the Atlantic breeze is behind us, pushing the vessel towards St. Vincent. It's even rougher coming back when you're going against the Atlantic currents, you know. But a lot of the guys were sick even going to St. Vincent, but the girls were not sick. I suppose the fellas were excited about the trip too, but somehow we were not sick. But the guys were sick, and I'm sure they were probably expecting us to be sick as females because we're traveling on this vessel and it's not the, you know, most luxurious and so on. But we were just gung-ho, and we just, you know. So in St. Vincent, we had to set up camp. I think we were on the windward side.
That was quite an experience. Facilities were not easy. They really were not. And what we learned, as I said, we learned to cope, we learned to make do. I remember night 2, we were 2 girls on guard duty, Margot Green and I. And we had an intruder in the camp. That was a lot of excitement. I remember a route march into Kingstown and coming back up in the hot sun. And of course, St. Vincent isn't flat like Barbados, so. And I remember being on the verge of passing out and others around having to lift me. I wasn't the only one. So there were lots of memories. They were very, very good memories, very good memories.
The guys had to set up tents. Dayton Maynard, of course, he was forever very solicitous towards us because he was in charge of us. You mean, at that time, you don't appreciate the great responsibility that is on the shoulders of someone like that who has taken on the role of taking care of us, making sure that we are returned to our parents safely. So he was very, you know, solicitous in making sure that these girls are okay. So while the guys, they created the tents, they had to pitch tents and set up their own tents and so on, we were given accommodation in a little building that was attached to, like, there was like a great house on the campsite. And there would be facilities there. It was where the cooking was done and all that kind of thing. So we were given a little wing of that house, which would be our quarters. So we were there with a chaperone who would be, she doubled as, like, she was the cook and so on. And she was supposed to be our chaperone, you know, making sure that at night we are all accounted for. Not that we are going anywhere, but, you know, girls will be girls, boys will be boys. So she was our chaperone, that we are accounted for, and we are all there safely the following morning, you know. And the guys would be in their tent. So we would not have been subjected to the kind of, is it grubbing or beatings or which I understand happens when guys go camp, when you went to camp as a cadet or a scout, or, you know, because it was all the cadets from Barbados. It was from the company at large, Harrison College. There were 3 companies at the time only, yeah. So it was the large company, the Harrison College, the Commonwealth Company. So cadets from the 3 companies went to camp in St. Vincent. So we were not subjected to that, the whole beating. You know, I understand that you'd be sleeping and next thing you know, you have getting a lash and things like that. We didn't get that. So in that way, as girls, we were protected. But then the schedule involved a parade into Kingstown. It's sort of like a midway point between Kingstown and where we were staying. So we had a ceremonial event there where we paraded, and then we had one where we went into Kingstown, right, all the way into Kingstown. At the camp, we, you know, even though we were not going back to school because we had not done the APC, this test was necessary, certification was necessary for you to become a Lance Corporal. If you wanted to become a Lance Corporal, you had to pass this test. So we were, during the course of the camp, we were allowed to pursue that module, so that when, for those who would be returning to school, once they did well, they would then become Lance Corporals, like the guys and so on that would have been at camp. They get the opportunity to become Lance Corporals when they went back to school. Well, of course, I didn't go back to school, so I didn't get the chance to become a Lance Corporal. Yeah, even though I passed the test, but I didn't get a chance. We had some free time. We would be given some free time. Even if we had free time and we went off the camp, we still had to be in cadet clothes. But because Lieutenant Maynard was so protective of us, he was really, I don't know, you know, like a parent who don't want you to go too far because they're so anxious that, you know, something may happen. So he was like that. He was very solicitous with us, and he didn't like us going too far from camp and so. So I think in that way we were kind of like, you know, we spent a lot of time on camp. As I said, the bathrooms were a little down the hill, where if you want to have a shower and so on. And you had each morning, you got up, you go into the mess room with your little, what I call a mess pan. That's not a very attractive term, but it's the mess. It's like a metal pan that you can, is attached to your belt, and you have a cup with it too, and you get whatever you're getting for breakfast, your meal, your sausage and your egg or your toast, and it goes into the mess pan, and you get your hot drink you know, and you go and sit down at the long table in the mess room and you have your breakfast. And then you would have your day's activity, involve training, you know, different kinds of training. We may have a little parade where we form up, because it was a spacious campsite. So you form up and you do your parade drills and so on. So all in all, it was very interesting. It was interesting. On the way back to Barbados now, oh boy, that was not good. We did not get sick on the way to St. Vincent, but going back to Barbados, even the girls were nauseous, because the water is really rough when you're coming from the islands to Barbados. You know, the Atlantic surf and currents just against the little boat, and you're feeling every, you know. So we were sick. We were nauseous when we were going back to Barbados. And I do recall that when we were, when we were going back to Barbados, I don't think we had a bath in about 2 or 3 days. It's true. Because something had happened at the campsite, and the water, there was no water. Even though they had the showers down, there was no water. So it was like you're going back and a whole set of people unbathed, going back to Barbados, and you're feeling nauseous. And I don't know if it would have been the surf or just the you know, the air inside the boat, you know. But all in all, it was memorable. It was a memorable experience.
Unforgettable events, now part of the treasured memories of the first females of the Barbados Cadet Corps. Thankfully, it is crystallized in the audiovisual format and shared with all of us. Essentially the very purpose of this series. We invite you to join us next week at the same time for the final chapter of Unveiling the Vanguard. I'm Miles Eversley. Thanks for your time.